Welcome to the Holistic Feline and Friends podcast, home for all things holistic and healthful for our pets. I'm your host, Angela, also known as the Holistic Feline on Instagram. In this season finale episode, we're talking with crème de la crème and medical intuition, Julie Ryan. She is a medical intuitive and psychic medium with over 30 years of experience. Her accuracy and ability are next level, and it will blow your mind. I know it did mine. She is someone who has saved lives time and time again, someone who is like a human MRI and has caught misdiagnosis, preventing unnecessary invasive surgeries and leading people and pets on a true road to recovery. She is someone who sees disease or ailments in the body before detectable on tests. Someone who can give you accurate answers with precision. Someone with real answers to what is going on within a body, whether it be a pet or human. Someone who performs profound and powerful energy healings, and someone who can determine if a pet or person is preparing to depart Earthside and which phase of the transition they are experiencing. Medical intuition and energy healing has a place in veterinary medicine. It can be a beautiful complement, marriage, partnership, and another tool in our pet's spectrum of care, a truly holistic approach. A lot of times, real answers lie within the unseen and undetectable. With an open heart and mind, ego and judgment aside, we can work as a team to help our furry loves heal. My hope in sharing Julie and her abilities is that it will bring light, hope, healing, and answers into your lives. If you, someone you know, or your pet need a first opinion, second opinion, third opinion, fourth, fifth, sixth, or last resort, please contact Julie for clarity, hope, healing, and answers. A medical intuitive may just be your missing piece to the puzzle. Without further ado, get ready for a buffet of psychicness as we welcome Julie Ryan. Welcome, Julie. We are so excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. So I had originally seen and heard you on a fellow podcast called Magic Hour with Taylor Page, and you absolutely blew me away. And then I saw you also include pets within your services. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have to have you. You would be so perfect for our podcast. So thank you for being here. I know we're going to introduce a new concept to most people today and also blow some minds along the way. But first, may we begin with a self-introduction, who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm delighted to be with you. Thanks for the invitation to spend some time with you and all your listeners. I am a businesswoman and an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world who learned how to do woo-woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness. How about that? For an intro. I have founded 9 companies in 5 industries. And I learned how to be a medical intuitive energy healer and psychic medium. And that's really what I spend most of my time doing these days.
I know medical intuitive is a new concept to most, and we're going to dive into that in just a moment. It excites me very much. But first, can you explain what intuitive communication is and how it works?
Sure. We're all spirits connected to a body having a human experience. Pets are as well. They are spirits connected to their little bodies, whether they be a lizard or a cat or a dog or a donkey or whatever. And we have the ability, all of us, to communicate telepathically because we're all energy and so is our spirit. So how mediumship or intuitive communication works is it's our spirit connecting with, like my spirit connecting with yours, Angela, or connecting with a pet spirit. And distance and time are irrelevant in spirit communication because time is a human concept. Time doesn't exist in the spirit world. So I'm like a human MRI. I can see inside people's bodies with their permission, inside pets' bodies to animals' bodies. And that's where the medical intuitive and energy healing part of the equation works. And in the meantime, I'm communicating with them telepathically while I'm doing that. And if you think about it too, Angela, People have been able to communicate telepathically since the beginning of time. We certainly know about indigenous cultures like the Aboriginal people in Australia, and they can communicate telepathically across thousands of miles when one of their people are out on their walkabouts. Usually it's young men. And certainly we all have intuitive communication in the form of most of us, if not all of us, have had a situation where we think of somebody and we either get a call from them or an email or a text, or we run into them and we say, oh my gosh, what a coincidence. Well, there's no coincidence there. It's your intuitive, your telepathic communication at work.
So as you were saying that everybody is intuitive, I too am an intuitive communicator. We all truly are. Just a matter if we nurture, practice, and listen to it. I have been doing it a while for myself and friends and family and even some followers online. But next to you, I'm a beginner or intermediate status, and there's so much more to learn and practice. So let's dive into medical intuition. It has always fascinated me. There are times, sometimes even without trying, that I have received divine downloads or communication regarding the health or medical state of people and animals. And I am always blown away when the information is validated by someone or life itself. Can you explain what a medical intuitive is and what they do?
Sure. I have always been interested in healing. My career for 30 years was in the hospital supply industry, and started my first company at 25, and I manufactured surgical devices sold throughout the world. So when I heard the term medical intuitive, I thought, well, ooh, what's that? It was 30 years ago, Angela. And I was in my mid 30s and I thought, oh, I want to know more. Well, we didn't have the internet yet. So I did the old fashioned thing and I went to a bookstore to see what I could find, because I thought, well, there's probably going to be more information there than even in my local library. And I found a book called Hands of Light by a former NASA physicist called Barbara Brennan, who's now deceased. And she parlayed very quantum physical concepts, complicated, quantum physics concepts into understandable languaging for the non-scientific mind. That would be me. And she taught how to utilize energy frequencies to help heal. And that's what I do. So as I mentioned before, I'm like a human MRI, and I can connect in with any person anywhere on the planet, even if you were on a planet far, far away in a galaxy far, far away, Angela. Same with animals. And I connect into them, takes me a nanosecond. And it's like I'm a human MRI. I have a big screen TV in my head and I can see inside their bodies with their permission, broken bones, torn ligaments, viral infections, bacterial infections, cancer, whatever. And then spirit works through me and with me to help them heal themselves. Because it's important to remember that nobody ever heals anybody else. No doctor, no shaman, no healer like me, no medical provider of any kind ever heals anybody else. We help the person heal themselves. And an analogy I like to use for that is, think of, you have a big cut in your leg and you go to the emergency room to get it stitched up. Well, the doctor will stitch your leg, but he doesn't make your skin grow back. You make your own skin grow back. And that's how this works. And it works that way with animals as well. And it's all predicated on what our spirit wants to explore and experience in this lifetime. So we can send the healing, which is what I do, and then that person or that animal's spirit will utilize that healing in a way that is going to best allow them to explore and experience whatever they want to in this lifetime.
So I know you mentioned sometimes you see a hologram as well, and the MRI and the X-ray visual is incredibly fascinating. And the first I've heard of this, how and where did you learn the MRI and X-ray?
Well, it's just a form of energy. And energy from spirit is all code. It's kind of like Morse code, or people who are in the computer industry and in the IT industry, you'll hear, okay, they're going to code something for this purpose. That's how spirit communicates. And then we interpret that code in a multitude of ways. And those ways can be visual, they're auditory, they're direct knowing, where thoughts come into one's head, they're kinesthetic, we get feelings of things. And I studied for 6 years, this was 30 years ago, on how to do energy healing. And what I learned, Angela, was when I first started doing this stuff, I realized that once you connect with spirit, you can do it all. I don't quite understand why in the woo woo space, we got the healers and we got the mediums and we got the pet psychics and we got the past life people and we got the whatever, angel communicators. Well, once you connect with spirit, you can do it all. And I have taught thousands of people so far in 14 countries how to do what I do. My skills are all completely learned.
It's funny that you said that once you connect with spirit, you can do it all. I have a very personal experience with this exact thing. Last year, a family member was in a serious car accident and going into emergency brain surgery. The surgeon gave him a 50% chance of survival, and she honestly did not think he would make it. While undergoing brain surgery, I performed a Reiki and communication session with him and connected with his higher self, his soul, his spirit. And in doing so, I also connected with his guides, my guides, angels, other loved ones who previously passed, just an absolute array of spirit beings. And from this communication session, I knew he was going to survive the surgery and the accident as a whole. I also knew he would recover almost fully. And so I relayed this message to my family in hopes it would bring them hope and some sort of comfort in such a scary time. Post-surgery, he remained in a medical-induced coma, and it took him several weeks to fully come back Earthside. So throughout his nonverbal recovery, I continued to connect with him and relay any messages he had for the family and vice versa. So I felt like I became his voice, giving him a voice when he could not speak. And he would beautifully validate our telepathic conversations at each hospital visit, whether by a requested eye flutter, a wiggle of the finger or toe, or anything I had asked during our energetic session. As traumatic as that time was for all of us, it was also such a profound yet beautiful experience I had with him. I truly witnessed and lived the power of Reiki and intuitive communication. This experience held a lot of firsts for me. It was the first time I did it for a family member, the first time I shared the information I received. I typically keep it to myself, and the first time connecting with someone nonverbal. The whole experience just absolutely blew my mind, and I didn't have a full name for all the spirit connections I was making, and I racked my brain trying to give a name or explain what I was doing when I was asked. And I eventually came up with the term intuitive communication, or intuitive interspecies communication, because I felt it was a big umbrella term as to what I was doing. Once I connected, I could speak to whomever came through, even the sea or trees, which has also occurred. Then, several months later, I heard you on a podcast say, once you connect with spirit, you can do it all. And there was really no need to title yourself as an individualized anything. And that absolutely resonated with me and literally validated that whole experience. It all just made so much sense to me. And so I thank you for that.
You are most welcome. Spirit, as I mentioned, communicates in code, and it's a numeral code. So if I'm having a conversation with a spirit who didn't speak English in their most recent past life, let's say I'm talking to somebody that only spoke French, and we're talking with them, and I've got their loved ones in a private consult with me, and they'll say, well, but my mom only spoke French. And I say, it doesn't matter, because spirit's going to communicate it in a way that I understand it so I can relay the information. So nothing gets lost in translation, in other words, with this stuff. It always comes in a way that we can understand. When you mentioned that you were talking with angels and spirit guides and this multitude of people, multitude of spirits, if you will, I will talk to spirit. I call it spirit, and it's everybody. It's the whole kit and caboodle.
Right.
God, the universe, the angels, your loved ones, your spirit guides, your pets, your like the whole thing. And then spirit will use individual spirits, big spirit will use individual spirits to communicate with us because it helps us have a better grasp of the communication from our human perspective. For example, if we're talking to your deceased grandmother, you have a familiarity with her and she can give you information, her spirit, that will let you know it's really her with whom we're communicating. So you're going to trust the information more. So I find that one of my favorite movies is Contact. Angela, have you seen that movie with Jodie Foster? It's old.
No.
Oh, watch it. It's great. So, spoiler alert, at the end, she's on a different planet and an alien comes up to her, but the alien looks like her dad because the alien doesn't want to alarm her, wants her to feel comfortable and be with somebody that she knew and loved. So that's how spirit works too. I can describe what your loved ones look like when I'm communicating with them. And that's just going to give you a frame of reference. One other funny thought, when you were talking about working with your family, what I found, and it sounds like you've experienced the same thing, is my family was looking at me like, why are you doing this? And why do you care about it? And I said, I don't know. It's just interesting. And they said, well, what are you going to do with it? And I said, again, I have no idea, having no clue that I'd be doing this full time 30 years later. And they looked at me like I was weird and they didn't understand it. And it's like, whatever. But that changed, that changed when somebody had a medical thing going on. And I said, well, do you want me to scan you? And they said, yeah. And I did. And I nailed it based on what the doctor said or based on what the x-rays showed before they had the x-ray even done. And so that started to get them thinking about, okay, well, maybe there's something to this. And interestingly enough, this morning I was talking with my younger brother, who was very skeptical about all of this stuff. And he knows my operation now. I got a pretty big operation going here, 7 books and lots of classes and 4 shows a week on my Ask Julie Ryan show and all that. And he told me that he had given my website to a friend of his because his daughter is really interested in this stuff. And they were talking about it while they were playing golf. And so I was teasing him. I said, boy, you've come a long way over 30 years since I first started studying this stuff. There's no doubt now that, you're doing this. I said, yep. So it's fun when families kind of, the light bulb goes off and they go, oh, maybe Angela really does know what she's doing. Maybe there really is more to this story. And what I have found, and it'd be interesting to see if you found the same thing, Angela, is that really helps people enhance their spirituality because it gives them a frame of reference of, okay, really, there must be more to the story than meets the eye.
Yeah, I hope that is something that came out of it as well. I mean, at the time, like people were asking me like, what are you doing or how are you doing it? And I can explain kind of how I do it, but I didn't have a word for what I was doing.
And what you can call this is woo-woo. That's an all-encompassing name, number one. And number two, I have a friend, Angela, who's a Taoist priest. And when I used that word, he said, how do you know about woo? And I said, I don't know. It just came to me from spirit. I call it woo-woo. And people usually laugh. So it kind of gets them from being nervous about talking about spiritual things. And he said, do you know what woo means in Taoism? I said, no, I have no clue. And he said, it means source. I said, well, that's why source spirit sent me that name. Tell your family members and your parents you're doing woo-woo.
I will, and I'll break it down what it means too. For you, is the process the same whether you're scanning a pet or a human?
Yes, very much so. I raise my vibrational level. I teach this. It happens in a nanosecond. some people teach that you got to meditate for an hour and twirl 3 times and jump on your left foot and raise your right hand. And I have found that not to be necessary. It takes a nanosecond to turn your abilities on and off. And what we're doing is we're raising our vibrational level to the level of spirit. It's like we're tuning our satellite dish into the station that is the spirit frequency. And then it's attention intention. I think of the person or the animal that I want to scan for a medical scan or to talk to them even. And then my satellite dish head tunes itself to their vibration, because every spirit has a frequency that they keep throughout all of their lifetimes. And so who do you want to talk to? You want to talk to your grandma? You want to talk to Napoleon? You want to talk to Moses, Elvis? It doesn't matter. You just think of them. And it doesn't matter whether you knew them or not, because it's our spirit connects with their spirit. And even if they've reincarnated, they'll matter because we're connected into their spirit. And that opens up something similar to a two-way radio communication. And then we can have a conversation with them.
And so if you connect to them, let's just say they're reincarnated and you connect to their spirit, would you be speaking to their old self that had passed or their new self that has reincarnated?
I'm talking with their spirit, which is what is the consistent self of them. Think of it this way. If you have a TV set and you've got it tuned to KTLA in Los Angeles, and they're broadcasting that, whatever that programming is on that TV station, and they're using a frequency to broadcast that. And that's the channel that you tune to. So if your TV set breaks, does that mean that KTLA is not broadcasting their programming anymore? No, it means that your receiver isn't working. That's what happens when somebody dies. So when we reincarnate, our spirit just comes into a new receiver. Like if your TV breaks and you go buy a new TV and you tune it to the same station, you're going to be able to pick up that broadcast. And that's how it works with spirit as well. Now, where it gets really interesting, and this makes my head want to explode because I don't understand it from a human perspective, is when we think about, there are lots of people that believe that we live multiple lifetimes concurrently.
Mm.
And so you're thinking, okay, what's going on there? And I don't understand that from a human perspective. So where I go with something in the woo-woo space that I don't understand is I'll say to myself, well, is it feasible? Yeah, it's feasible. Will I understand it when I get back to heaven? Yeah. Okay, so that satisfies me. And in the meantime, I know too from doing lots of past life scans and working with lots of spirit guides is when somebody wants to find out who their main spirit guide is, spirit guides all look like a version of Father Time to me. Think of Dumbledore from the Harry Potter movies or Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings movies. You know, long hair, white beard, man, old man, white gown. And then when we talk with them, then they'll morph into looking like how they appeared in the lifetime that resonates and pertains to what's going on in the person's life with whom they're working. May I give you an example of that?
Absolutely.
I have a client who's a TV executive in beautiful downtown Burbank in the LA area. And he works for a big company that's an entertainment company. And he wanted to know, I work with a lot of corporate executives, and we talk to their spirit guides to get them advice and on their careers, on their jobs, what they're doing at work, stuff like that. And so this client wanted to know who his main spirit guide was. And we got who it was. And of course, he looked like Dumbledore when he first showed up. And then he morphed into looking like the banker from Monopoly, the board game, the 3-piece suit and all of that. And he gave us his name and he gave us a little bit about him. Well, he was the right-hand man to Jack Warner, who founded Warner Brothers Studios.
Mm.
He was the man behind the throne, right? That was making everything run. Jack Warner was the figurehead, but this was the guy that really was the brains behind the operation. He was the main spirit guide to my client who was in that industry.
Wow.
So that, I think, is a great example of how this works. I have another client who's a CEO of a company, and we were talking about his spirit guides. And one day we were sitting in his office and he had a big conference table there. And I was telling him who all the spirit guides that were sitting around the table. And they were people like Henry Ford and Sam Walton and Benjamin Franklin and people like that. And then Angela came to Mary Kay Ash. And he said, "Who's Mary Kay Ash?" And I said, the pink Cadillacs, Mary Kay Cosmetics. And he said, "What?" And he said, "Well, why would she be one of my spirit guides?" And I said, she had this enormous army of sales reps that were housewives and stay-at-home moms who sold millions and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cosmetics. And it was all on straight commission. And they drove around pink Cadillacs. I said, she's probably the best person to advise you on your sales force. And that was the last person he expected to see. So that was fun too.
Yeah, I remember Mary Kay.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned psychic surgery or seeing a surgery in real time. Can you talk about that? I think that's also amazing.
Yeah, I see them all the time. I see surgeries all the time. And the ones that really, I think, are the most amazing, and this is a great example too of how things will evolve as we get new discoveries and new methodologies in the medical business, and also how the zeitgeist will shift as far as what people understand. Back when I first started doing this, I would see, let's say, a kidney transplant. And I spent 30 years in and out of actual surgeries because I'm an inventor of surgical devices. So we'd be testing prototypes and testing things and training surgeons and doing clinical research and stuff like that. So I have a good understanding of what happens in the operating room. I used to see transplants, like a kidney transplant, where there'd be the donor patient and they'd be under drapes and stuff, on an operating table. And then there'd be the recipient. So I'd watch the diseased kidney get removed from the recipient. I'd watch the donor kidney get removed from the donor, get put back in, all the plumbing get hooked up, all of that. Well, a little less than 10 years ago, I stopped seeing that procedure. But now what I see happen, Angela, is I'll see whatever body part we need get generated with stem cell energy. Now think about zeitgeist again. Most people weren't aware of what stem cells even were 10 years ago, but most people have at least heard of stem cells at this point when we're taping this in 2025. So I'll see a mold, let's say, of a left kidney, and I'll watch stem cell energy fill this mold. Think of a plastics mold. I manufactured surgical devices, as I mentioned. So we use blow molds and injection molds in manufacturing. But think of an ice cube tray or a bud cake, mold, or a Jell-O mold. Those are all forms of molds. So the stem cell energy will go into the mold that looks like a left kidney, for example. And stem cell energy is the absolute coolest stuff because it'll generate any body part we need on an animal or a human or a plant or a tree or whatever. And it's a light amber colored gel, excuse me, as I perceive it, Angela, and it has sparkles in it because, it's woo-woo, gotta have sparkles. It reminds me of this hair gel when I was a kid in the 60s and 70s called Dippity Doo. You can look it up if you don't know what it is. And they still sell it on Amazon, which is hilarious all these years later. And it'll fill this mold and there'll be a vortex spinning above it. And that centrifugal force in the vortex will transform the stem cell energy into whatever body part we need. So then once that left kidney is formed, I'll watch the diseased kidney get removed like they do in regular surgery. I'll watch the new kidney, not from a donor, but from stem cells. And, in labs all around the world now, they're growing new organs with stem cells. I'll watch that stem cell generated kidney get implanted into that person. I'll watch all the plumbing get hooked up. I'll watch the clamps get removed, all of that. And then I'll whenever a new organ starts up, once it's installed into a body, there's this diesel engine sound that I hear. And think of a Harley starting up, and then it's working. And I've lost count of how many times new organs have been generated with stem cell energy and have shown up on subsequent scans at the doctor's office or at the hospital. And over the years, Angela, I've had doctors call me and say, okay, what's going on? How's this work? How do you do this? And I tell them, well, if you go back to your 5th grade science lessons, you'll remember that every cell has a nucleus. Every nucleus is surrounded by cytoplasm. Cytoplasm's a watery gel like dippity-doo. And our bodies have a centrifugal force in them that spins, that causes the cells to divide and replicate to the tune of billions of them a day. We're just watching this healing in warp speed of what the body does on its own. It can generate something totally new, like in the example I just mentioned with the left kidney. And the healing, as I mentioned before, it integrates into the body based on what that person's spirit or that animal's spirit wants to explore and experience in this lifetime. Remember, I mentioned that nobody heals anybody else?
Right.
The healing happens on the energetic level. So it's already done. And then it's that person's spirit's prerogative, their choice to integrate the healing or not. And if they decide to integrate it in a way that's going to best facilitate whatever it is their spirit's exploring in this lifetime.
It's powerful.
It's really fascinating. I get to see amazing things in the work that I do. I've done healings on tens of thousands of people from around the world, and some of them heal instantly because that's what their spirit wants. Some of them need complementary care like change in diet, physical therapy, surgery, whatever. And then some people don't heal at all. But I always say that death is a form of healing. And that's what they choose. They choose that, okay, they're done with this incarnation. I want to go back to heaven. And then that's what they choose. So all we can do is send the healing to somebody, and then they decide how they're going to integrate it. It's kind of like, you tell a kid to eat his peas. He's going to say, Mom, I hate peas. I'm not eating them. They're disgusting. Well, you can't make him eat the peas. It's the same thing. You can't make somebody accept a healing. But all we can do is have spirit work through us and with us to facilitate them healing themselves. The healing is done on the energetic level, and then they decide how and if they're going to integrate it.
I love that explanation, and it makes a whole lot of sense. How may one benefit from seeking a medical intuitive, whether it be for themselves, their loved ones, or for their pets?
Well, oftentimes, I would say, most of the time when I'm talking, especially to a client for an hour, or if somebody calls into my show on Thursday nights, my Ask Julie Ryan show, we do a live show where people call in from all over the world, and they join us on the YouTube live stream too. And they're asking questions on the whole buffet of psychicness. But when somebody's coming in with a medical issue, most of the time they've been to see multiple practitioners, physicians, and others. In some instances, gotten multiple diagnoses and treatment suggestions, and they still have the same symptoms. And so they're coming to me kind of as a last resort, or one of my graduates. I have 5 graduates that work with me that talk to clients as well and do the buffet of psychicness with them. And so inevitably, I'll have somebody like I had this morning who's a client, and this guy was healthy. And then all of a sudden he started having all this stuff go wrong, and they've had every test known to mankind and been to see multiple doctors, and nobody can figure out what the heck's going on. He's got numbness. He's got balance issues. He's got excruciating pain. He has anxiety issues. He has all this plethora of symptoms that have come up in, I would say, a couple of months. So they're coming to me going, okay, could you help us? We've exhausted all the regular medical stuff. And I got this guy on my radar again. It's like I have a big screen TV in my head and I connected into him and I pulled him up like an MRI. And I said, he is full of mold. Where's the mold?
Mm.
And his wife said, we had a big water leak in the roof from a storm and we haven't gotten it fixed yet. And we do have a mold issue. Well, bingo. That's what was causing all of his symptoms. So we did several healings. We did healings on him in different areas of his body, if you will. Got the mold out, got his gut cleaned up, worked on roto-rootering his neurological system, got that fixed, got several other things that he had going on. He had some not connected to the mold, but he had some disc degeneration in his back and he had some vertebral collapse. So we fixed that. A lot of stem cell energy with this guy.
Mm.
And then I said, I'm going to send you a follow-up email and there will be a link in there. When you click on that, it'll lead to a Word doc and the Word doc's going to have a whole bunch of reference links on it. And I gave him a doctor to talk to who specializes in mold detox. I gave him other things that he could do himself physically. I gave him a center that he could go to in his area to get a brain scan. He thought he was losing his mind because he had such anxiety and depression issues. Well, the mold was causing malabsorption issues. So the serotonin and dopamine and the good chemicals that we need to feel good and have a clear thinking brain were not absorbing properly. And so we talked about that and got a lot of that done. So there's always a follow-up when I'm working with somebody to say, okay, we're taking care of it on the spiritual side, but I'm all about blending spirituality and practicality together. Practicality on the human side. What can you do to help integrate this into your body and help your body heal? And these are references. I always tell them it's like a cheat sheet. Download it and save it on your computer because I've done all the legwork for you. There's all kinds of links and interviews and books and stuff like that for them to really educate themselves on how they can heal themselves. And it works great.
So I'm always drawn to real life stories. Can you share some life-changing and inspiring stories from scans you have done on pets and humans that have changed or even saved a life?
Yeah, another mold story. I told it to this client this morning. There is an ER, emergency room physician in Santa Barbara, California, a little bit north of you, who his father called me and he said, my son's been on disability for about a year and he's bedridden now and nobody can figure out what the heck's going on with him. And he said, would you be willing to scan him? And I said, yeah, I'll ask his permission. You probably want to set that up first. And they did. So I talked to the son and he also was full of mold. And I said, do you have a mold problem? He said, yeah, my house is full of black mold. I said, you got to get out of there. And then 6 months later, he called me and I gave him all the resources and everything and got him in touch with some doctors that could help him really heal his body on the physical side. And he called me 6 months later and he said, you saved my life. I said, well, I don't know about that. He said, no, really. He said, all my colleagues missed this. Nobody tested me for this. And this was killing me. It can cause cancer. It can cause all these crazy symptoms that don't seem to be related, but they are because they're all from the mold toxicity. Many other things like I'll see cancer that's metastasized in certain parts of the body before it shows up on the PET scans or the MRIs or CT scans at the hospital or doctor's office. I can see things. I have a client in Ireland who had just come back from an African safari a couple of weeks before she was having this persistent cough and she was really having a tough time breathing. So they took her to the emergency room and they did a scan on her, did a x-ray or whatever. And they said, well, you have cancer in your lungs. And she's texting me and I'm saying, no, you don't. You got mold in your lung. You got a fungal infection from the dirt that you breathed in Africa. And they said, no, she's got a bunch of lesions. She needs to start on chemo tomorrow. I said, just tell them to back off for a couple of days and get on an antifungal. Well, 3 days later, she was released from the hospital because the lesions were gone. They were fungal infection. They weren't cancer. It was a misdiagnosis. So
Wow.
we'll see that a lot. I'll see cancer that's metastasized and I'll say, all right, it's metastasized to your lung and your left pelvis. And they'll say, no, it isn't. I just had a PET scan and it's not showing up. And I'll say, well, okay, it is. And we're working on it. So it'll integrate into your body and then they'll talk to the doctor and get another scan. And sure enough, it'll show up. So we know that works. When I see somebody that has metastasized cancer, Angela, I sp think of it as a dairy cow. Think of a white dairy cow with black splotches on it. And those splotches are where the cancer is metastasized. So I can get an image of them and I can see the cancer in my mind's eye where it's gone from perhaps the original place. And then we'll do a healing. We'll do a lymph cleanse. We'll do a lymph node extraction, replace with new lymph nodes made with stem cell energy. We'll do a heavy metal detox. This is all energetically. And then probably the most important part of a healing was somebody that has a really dramatic disease like that is we'll do a DNA healing where I watch the DNA that's mutated and causing problems. I'll watch it get put back to a normal recipe. And I can describe that to you if you want. And then it works great. And then the cancer just disappears throughout their body once we do the DNA healing.
Can you describe the DNA?
Sure. My analogies are really funny. And honest to God, that's how they come into my head. And I know after all this time that that's how spirit communicates what's going on to me so that I can in turn relay that information to somebody so it's understandable, like the dairy cow with the black spots. Everybody can picture that. So DNA looks to me like a piece of paper you'd see inside a fortune cookie with the fortune written on it. And it's comprised of 4 nucleic acids, and they're represented by 4 letters, A, T, C, and G, like green, G for green. And one strand of DNA can have from 100,000 letters on it up to 1 billion letters. The strands of DNA always come out of an X chromosome because girls have 2 X's and boys have an X and a Y, taking you back to your 5th grade science lessons again. So I watched those letters get resequenced. Imagine playing Scrabble in warp speed, where you take a letter and move it up and over to form a word. That's what I watch happen. When the strand is resequenced, it snaps back into the X chromosome, and then that goes back into the body. So when I'm working with somebody perhaps with cancer, we'll do the lymph cleanse, we'll do the lymph node, we'll do the heavy metal, then we'll do the DNA. When I see where the cancer is located, and cancer looks to me, Angela, like hot tar that's used to pave a road. It's sticky and it's thick and it's black. It can be dark brown or black. So I'll encapsulate it when I first get them on my radar. We'll do the lymph cleanse, lymph node, the heavy metal, and then we'll do the DNA healing. And all those encapsulated pieces of clusters of cancer cells will immediately just evaporate. They just are extinguished and they disappear. It's wild. It's like if you have back to the dairy cow example, and you've got the white cow with the black spots, we do the DNA healing and then all the black spots just fall off and disappear over the cow and you just got a white cow left. That's
Wow.
what it looks like. Yeah, it's fascinating.
I mean, this is amazing. You're amazing. And my mind is always blown every time I hear you speak and your experiences. Like, it's just, I mean, I wish so many people knew about this. Like, there's there's options and there's answers, and there's always somebody there to help you. You just got to deep dive a little bit. And I mean, that's pretty amazing what you're doing.
It's so funny how people find out about this. I had somebody this morning as a client, and I always ask, well, how did we get introduced? And he said, my grandmother. And I said, oh, do I know your grandmother? Have I worked with her? And he said, no, she's been dead for 20 years. And I said,
Oh,
okay, how's that work? Well, she came to me in a dream and she said, you need to talk to Julie Ryan. And he said, I thought to myself, who in the hell is Julie Ryan? And he said, I looked you up online and I found you and I made an appointment with you. And I said, I love it when dead people are doing my marketing for me.
that's amazing.
I know. I love it. I've had deceased pets come to their owners in dreams and say, you need to work with Julie Ryan. And so I'll say to them, well, how did we get introduced? They'll say, well, my cat introduced us. It's like, oh, great. Tell me about your cat. I'll say, well, she's been dead for 10 years and her name was Trixie or something. I'll say, well, thanks, Trix.
Do you have specific stories about scans that you've done on pets that have changed their lives that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a client that had a mastiff lab mix named Rooney. And Rooney was just this dog that was just this big, lovable lug of a dog. You know, he just kind of hoody-doed around and loved everybody and thought he was a poodle. He'd sit on your lap, but he was close to 100 pounds. Well, Rooney decided to eat one of the cat toys. And and they were worried that they were going to have to do surgery on him. And so I got a call and I had Rudy on my radar. And so we just pulverized the cat toy. I mean, and he swallowed it whole. They could see it on the x-rays at the vet. And so we just pulverized it into little teeny tiny pieces. And then he pooped it out. So they saw pieces of the knitted part. They saw like little fraction of a strand of yellow yarn or orange yarn or whatever. And he didn't have to have surgery. So we can do things like that all the time. I work a lot with clients that have a pet at the end of their lives, and we can communicate with the pet. And they're distraught because they're wondering whether it's euthanization is warranted or whether the time is right. And that's such an excruciating decision. So we can talk with the pet telepathically, and inevitably they will say things like, when their owner, my daughter-in-law is a veterinarian, she calls the owners her humans and her patients are the pets. So we'll have the pet's human say, well, how will I know it's time to put them down? And the pet will usually say, when I can't control my bowels.
Mm.
That's very common. Or the pet will say, whenever you're ready, because I'm just staying around, until you're ready. I'm here for you. I'm going to support you, Mom, until you're ready to put me down. And when they hear that, they know if their pet is suffering, that it's really more about them now than it is about the pet. The other thing that I hear a lot from pets, spirits, especially when they've just passed, is go get another pet quickly and I'll help you choose them. And they do, and that's really sweet. And then they'll tell us information about certain toys that they want the new puppy or the new kitten or the new lizard or whatever to use their toys. But they're very emphatic about don't wait to go get another pet. I think most humans believe that they don't have the capacity to love another pet while they're grieving. And yet having the new pet helps them process their grief.
It took me 6 years to finally get another one, but I do believe our late Monkey Bean sent our Millie Moon Bean to us. I journal a lot and I do automatic journaling, and I speak to my late Dickle Bean and had lots of conversations with her before we adopted Millie. And I feel very strongly that she sent her to us, which is why her full name ends with Bean, like Monkey Bean.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really sweet.
I do want to say, I know when you were talking about your energy healings, I wanted to say that I had sat in a few times online to some of your energy healings, and they're absolutely incredible. And the details in which you receive and the healing you perform always leaves me in awe. So that's incredible. And I encourage everybody to go check out all the things that you do and offer and listen and witness those things. So in closing, are there any closing thoughts or insight or knowledge you would like to share as a final word?
Sure. Thank you for those kind comments. I really appreciate it. And I want everybody to know that everybody has the ability to do this stuff, and it's spirit working through us and with us to help pets and to help humans and to help trees and plants and whatever. And that nobody does this on their own. It's all spirit that's working through us to help these other entities heal. Speaking of that, I do have a class that I teach twice a year that is called Angelic Attendant Training, where you learn the whole buffet of psychicness. And then I do teach a class just on medical intuition. And I teach a class on communicating with spirit as well. So all that stuff is at askjulieryan.com on my website. You can access all of that there. Also, for everybody listening, I have a gift for you, and that's a free copy of my book, Angelic Attendants: What Really Happens as We Transition from This Life into the Next. And it talks about how we're all surrounded by deceased loved ones' spirits and the spirits of deceased pets and also angels as we're dying. And lots of great pet stories in there about how the pets' spirits are there, and they're part of the Welcome to Heaven committee is what I've coined it. And so anybody that wants a free copy of that, we'll send you a free digital and audiobook download. Just go to julieryangift.com, julieryangift.com. And that's just as a thank you for listening to Angela and me today. And then everything is Ask Julie Ryan. My show, as I mentioned, we release 4 episodes a week on my Ask Julie Ryan show. We are on all the podcast networks. We have 5 YouTube channels. So if English isn't your first language, we've got it in Spanish, German, Portuguese, French, and Spanish, German, Portuguese, French, and one other one. I'll think of
English.
English. Yeah, English. Right. Thanks for that. And 7 books and, more coming. My goal is to get this information out there and to make it as affordable or free to receive this information. I think what happens as we're dying, this information should be taught in all the schools because everybody's so afraid to die. And there's no reason. It's glorious. Maybe not today, but when the time comes, there's nothing to be afraid of. Everybody goes to heaven. We're all surrounded by angels and our deceased loved ones. It's wonderful. Everything's Ask Julie Ryan. All social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, everything's Ask Julie Ryan. And my call-in show is every Thursday night at 8 Eastern. And you can come in on the Zoom, askjulieryanshow.com, or come in on the YouTube live stream and put a question in the chat. It's really fun. It's like a party every week. And it's so much fun. I think that's probably what you've listened to, Angela.
Yes.
And I never know who's calling. I never know what their question's going to be. I never know what Spirit's going to say. And so it's really just so joyful. Even when somebody has something very serious going on, I think it's important to remember that Spirit is pure love and joy. And so we're in a joyful frame of mind because the vibration is high, and that's the vibration of love and joy, and that's what heals. AskJulieRyan.com. That's the best place to start.
Fantastic. Everyone go check out everything that she offers. You will not regret it. And I'm sure you will find some answers. Julie, we want to thank you so much for joining us. You never cease to amaze me. Thank you for sharing your skill with all of us. And thank you for being a part of this world. You're changing lives, and we all thank you for it.
Oh, my honor. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Holistic Feline and Friends podcast. It is created, hosted, produced, and released with love, and my hope is you learn something along the way. When we know better, we do better. Please share your knowledge and our podcast with others. For more educational content, follow us on your favorite podcast platform, as well as Instagram at The Holistic Feline and online at theholisticfeline.com, where you will also find our blog that includes corresponding posts for each podcast episode with links to all the good stuff. Thank you again. We'll see you in the next episode.
The Holistic Feline and Friends podcast, website, blog, and socials are for informational and educational purposes only. All information, suggestions, recommendations, or comments, whether by written, verbal, audio, or otherwise either direct, indirect, or association, is not a substitute for professional veterinary care. Please provide your pets with a minimum annual professional veterinary visit and more often when health concerns arise. The Holistic Feline, Angela Warwick, and all guests and associates are speaking from experience and education. Please continue your research and form your own opinion. This is in no way a means to diagnose.